Hi, LinkedIn. Nice to see everybody today. Happy Tuesday. We are back for another really exciting conversation today. Those of you who are joining will probably giggle because leading up to this, I had to literally shut down 50 tabs to even get my computer to run, which is probably the most marketing related thing that you could possibly imagine in the background. So maybe other people are having to do that to even listen in today. But we are here to talk about nonprofits and social media. Is it a tool? Is it a trap? What is it exactly? And I think we're all trying to figure that out. So super excited to be facilitating one of my favorite topics in the sector because I think marketing's often not that well understood. So if you're joining us, please feel free to throw into the comments, say where you're joining us from, what maybe about social media is of interest to you, what you'd like to hear about, or maybe ask questions about today. And I'm Tasha. I am the co-founder and co-director here at the nonprofit Hive. And I love to talk about relational marketing, and that's one of my favorite parts of marketing. So I'm super excited to be here today. And we're going to be talking through just all the parts of nonprofit social impact ecosystem and how to jump into the social media space with these two lovely panelists. Unfortunately, we had one of our panelists drop. Wasim, we're going to miss you today. Before we jump in and have these lovely folks introduce themselves, I'm going to say a big thank you to Marissa Badgley. Revolution is our sponsor today, and she is fantastic. Professional development and leveraging the magic of humanity, which is exactly what we're all trying to do when it comes to social media and online. So I am going to first have Kate. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, social media, and nonprofit.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Kate Meyers Emery. I'm the Senior Digital Communications Manager at Candid. Candid is a nonprofit that helps nonprofits and funders connect with one another, and we have data about the social sector. So our social media outreach is very much based around data and getting people the information they need to do more good. And my own background is very much based in like experimentation, using social media in really different, interesting ways, and doing it with like little to no budget.
Sounds perfect and sounds very nonprofit. Okay, fantastic. Shay, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Shay Leonia. I am the communications manager at the American Humanist Association. We are a nearly century-years-old nonprofit that is seeking to spread awareness about humanism, but we are also fighting for the protection of separation of church and state and protecting people who are of all different belief backgrounds, including those of us who are non-believers.
I love that. This is going to be so interesting. And I think Shay was just mentioning about a podcast launch, so I'm going to just throw that in there. You should go check that out. Known Shay for quite a while, and we worked together on a couple projects, which is cool. And I'm sure for many of you, you will have seen some of the amazing work that comes out of Candid over the years. They're a space that I go to. I just actually threw in a backlink in an article with some Candid research. So definitely make sure to go and check that out as well. So we're going to jump in here right away to some heavy hitting kind of questions, because I think that's what many of us are struggling in the social media and nonprofit intersection right now. So what's the biggest shift you've seen in the past year, and how has it changed the way your organization or you yourself personally, potentially, because I know we both have some social media that we're doing of our own in certain channels. How is it changing how you're showing up? And I'm going to throw that to Kate first.
Yeah, so I think normally when I see this question, my immediate thought is like, how's the algorithm shifted? What new platform launched? But really, our social media at Candid was really impacted by the executive orders, the increased scrutiny on nonprofits, increased scrutiny around like the language that we're using and what we can and cannot talk about. And so we had major campaigns planned for the year that we completely threw out at the beginning, because we realized what our audience needed was very different than what we had been planning, because, you know, we weren't expecting all these things that happened. And so we went from kind of a very broad focus on like education and getting people involved with like demographic data collection to a focus more on like, what do nonprofits need right in this moment? What data do they need to present to their Congress people? What information do they need to know about the impact of SNAP on nonprofits? And so it really shifted more to like listening. Like we invested way more time in social listening than we ever have before because we just wanted to find out, what people were concerned about and what that really, how like the impacts were trickling down to the average nonprofit. And then like, what did we have that could help in that moment?
It's so interesting. I would very similarly, some of the content we planned for even some of these LinkedIn's was completely different. And we pushed some of them backwards because there were some that were just so relevant in the time frame and where people were at and what our community was talking about. So I love the reactive nature of the marketing. What about yourself, Shay?
When I came on board to American Humanist Association, we were fun and playful, but I feel like a lot of the content was very tailored toward what our audience had been, which was older, typically white academic types. And so we were following that certain model to just play nice. But we have wanted for a very long time to shift and expand into younger audiences. So we've leaned more into absurdity. We have also ditched hooks. Our benefit is that our younger audiences in particular that are voicing that they're feeling very aligned towards us are very vocal about what they do and don't like about any given content that we put out. And so it benefits us in knowing like, okay, people when they see a hook now are feeling like they're being sold to, like it's a copy paste moment, like it might be AI, and they don't want to feel that anymore. They want to feel just the authentic, like get to the meat of the story. And so we've really been leaning into not just authenticity, but being multifaceted. Like we're no longer paying attention to the niche. We are the niche, and we get to acknowledge that us as an organization, as well as our audience, have different aspects and different parts of themselves that they want to see represented at any given time. So we still know how to button it up and put out the right tone when there's something really serious that we need to blast out to our community. But then we also know how to make it like playful on days when we can talk about something silly.
I think that fine balance is what many nonprofits struggle for. And that's why a lot of marketing and nonprofit is exceptionally boring. Because
Yeah.
it's really hard to figure out that fine line, right? Of how do we represent our community? How do we also appeal to potential new markets? Because marketing is meant to be like, I think so many of us think of marketing and it's reaching new audiences. And that absolutely is part of it. But also how do we represent where we're at, where we aim to be is also hard, right? Because we might not be there yet, but we're aspiring to be here. And that can be really challenging, I think, to communicate. And nonprofit's really joyful. It can be really joyful. There's a lot of joy in this sector. And I think that people are looking for that, right? So if your communications a couple of years ago, I'm sure there's tons of books in psychology about how maybe marketing should change during great, like times are great. Money is very available versus when it's hard. I think sometimes we're missing the mark in how we communicate with our audiences.
For sure.
Yeah,
I think it
absolutely.
also depends greatly on who your executive director is and who the board is, because we've been given a lot of leeway around that. So it's not something that you're always going to run into, unfortunately, is have somebody that's willing to put on a Captain America costume and film some content.
Although that's fantastic. Really been loving the stuff coming out from Mamdani. I was just watching his snow. I'm in Canada, so snow and the Americans is its own funny thing for us to watch. But you're watching Mamdani and how he's reaching out and everything, and it's genuine. It's
Yes.
lovely, right? Like it's not schmarmy or weird or hooky. And I'm just throwing Dan's comment here. Dan's got some great things he's talking about. But I think many of us, especially if we're like on the LinkedIn end, have that they teach you the hooks, right? But they don't talk about how that sometimes makes people feel because it may stop you, but there's also marketing is aiming towards a future, and that immediacy is really tough to balance out, I think, as well. And great here, authenticity being the big trend for this year, right? I do think nonprofit is in a unique spot, actually, I think, to grab onto that. Kate, would you add anything to this? And some of what Shay said is awesome. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really is time to just focus on your audience and be flexible in that, of being willing to say, this campaign is not working. Like, we have it planned, we have assets, we've got stuff ready to go. We need to drop it. I think one of the biggest things that you can do with social media is like drop any ego you have around it, and just always be willing to say, like, that might have been my baby last year, but like this year, I've got to say no. I've got to say it's not working for us anymore. One of the things I was really proud about building was our video program. Like, we didn't have one. We launched a TikTok. We got really active with that. And this year we've stopped it because we're just really trying to focus on data and how we can get people data, because that is like what is kind of missing in a lot of parts of the sector. And so even though like that was something I was so proud of building, I'm able to just be like, that's not right for our audience in this moment. That's not what they're looking for. They need usable information.
That's great. It's a great self-reflection, and it is really hard to put down something that you created, because I think most of us who are in marketing, the act of creation is also just as exciting as putting it out there and figuring out how it lands. So it does feel personal a lot of the time, especially I think in nonprofit marketing, where you're really trying to connect with your audience. And it's not a sell. Like, the sell is very different than in for-profit marketing. Shay, I'm going to throw this over to you first, but internal mindset or structural changes that you think, you're already smiling, think nonprofits need to rethink the most, right? And I know we already started to kind of touch on this a little bit, but I'd love your thoughts.
Yeah, I know that every time that I've spoken to somebody who has expressed that they're feeling the obstacle around starting social media, I'm absolutely a proponent of like starting on one platform and really just getting your groove there. Just being willing to, like you said, to just get rid of what's not working, and to try different things. But what I'm finding is a lot of them are posting for the sake of posting. Like, they're posting for the sake of their platforms not being dusty anymore. And that gets hard because a lot of the nonprofits right now are running with a very small team, or even somebody that's just by themselves that doesn't have time to really nurture like marketing that would actually land well. So they're really just like, oh my gosh, that all I need to do today is just get something up, just get something up. So they'll go on Canva, find a template that looks pretty, and they'll put it out. And then that's that. What I think is really important though, is to find out like what part of your social media is landing within the part that is addressing the people that aren't aware of what your nonprofit is or what it's doing. What kind of content are you putting out that is addressing the people that are kind of still on the fence but need reminders that you exist? And then what content are you putting out for like your fans and your super fans? I think that if you're not checking all of those boxes, having a dusty social media platform is like take a break for a second and then come back to it once you have a plan, because otherwise you're just going to drive yourself into the ground. So yeah, I think just the capacity issue and the concern about having the dusty platforms is overtaking people from being able to do something effectively.
Yeah. I think a lot of small nonprofits also need to remind themselves that, you're not equivalent to some sort of like level of, in Canada, we have Sick Kids Foundation or some of these big hospital foundations.
Mm-hmm.
They have not only research teams figuring out the marketing, but they have they're spending thousands and thousands of dollars on like Google ads. Plus then they also manage to get the grant, plus all of these different things that you're like, this is a different marketing. This is a totally different plan. And that's okay. And so, oftentimes I'm going internal mindset shift of like, you don't have to compare yourself to these groups over here, because that's probably not going to land with the group that you're even trying to reach at the same, at that same level. Great advice. I love that advice. Kate, what about yourselves, structural changes like that you may see, or those mindset shifts?
Yeah, I think the big shift that I'd love to see happen is just more conversations of like, why are you on social media? And is social media the right platform for that why? Because you hear, we're on social media to do fundraising. Well, like, social media is not great as a fundraising platform. Like, unless you have like adorable kittens, like, it's gonna be a rough time for you to fundraise on social media. And so I think really drilling down into like the, you know, what it's good for and what it's not, and recognizing that. I also think a lot of organizations use it to promote the organization, which again, like, unless you have a giant budget, social media is not good at promotion. People get on social media for education, for entertainment, for information. So if you're providing one of those things, that's a really good reason to be on social media. For Candid, our social media is an extension of our mission. We are using social media to achieve our mission. So we're getting people information, we are getting them data, we're educating. And so like that makes sense, that tracks, that works with social media. And so I think just like setting everything aside for a minute and having that conversation of like, you know, is social media the right place? And then even, going back to what Shay was saying, like, is it the right platform? Like, Instagram might not be the right platform for you. Like, if you don't have a lot of photo or video content you can easily put out there, don't go on Instagram. Like, find a different platform, think about your audience. I think we're just not having those critical things. We're feeding the beast because we think we have to. And we're not stepping back and being like, do we? Do we actually?
It's really, really good advice. And two things that come to mind. One, a lot of people, if you don't know about what we're all about at the Nonprofit Hive, lovely to chat with you, or you can go and check us out. People are going to look at our LinkedIn and be like, this is bonkers, because we're able to pump that much content out. I will also say it did not start that way. Like, anybody who looks at what we're doing and thinks that that's somehow the standard of what you should be able to accomplish, we used to post twice a week. And it was always on Tuesdays and Fridays at exactly the same time, because that's what I could bite off and chew, because I had a full-time job on the side, and that's what made sense. It's only where it's at now because we ramped up there, and we also have a ton of great content. We have amazing people who support what we're doing, help create what it is, but it didn't start out that way. And so, don't be upset or concerned about the fact your social media might be a lot smaller than ours, and that's what's right fit for you. Shay kind of said it earlier, but if you can't, I would always say to somebody, commit to something and do it for 2 months. And if you feel like you have more capacity, add another day in, right? And then add another day. Don't instead think you have to start with a 5-day plan. Everybody I know burns out with that, if that's what your plan is, right? It's such a, that piece is really, really, really hard. And another thing, it's also totally fine to interrogate your social media platforms and look at them, because even though we have, I think, and I'm happy to be super transparent, I think we have 200 followers on Facebook or something in the same amount of time we've had our LinkedIn business page, right? And then we have about 2,800 followers on Instagram. Facebook beats Instagram traffic by 10x to our website. And no one would think that based on the numbers. So it is fine to go back and do that review, because your mindset might say to you, followers equals this, but it doesn't result in anything that's meaningful traffic wise for us, right? So you have to kind of look at those, because that's, I think it's really easy to just get head down. We're doing all the things in marketing because you can, but not thinking about why you do, or it's really, really tough.
And I think you hear that advice from experts. There's people all over LinkedIn, if you follow, who are the big social media experts that are like, you have to be on video. You have to be on TikTok. It's like, no, you don't. You don't have to. This advice is maybe not for you. And so taking the time to maybe experiment with it, try once a week and see if it actually works. Even just look to see are other nonprofits of your size and your cause able to do that. I think a lot of times people look at expert advice and think you have to follow it, and you feel a lot of guilt if you don't. But instead of taking that approach, just think that's a starting point for an idea or an experiment, and a brainstorm. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah. And give yourself permission to not do everything, right? Because that's, I think, sometimes the harder part, especially if you're not a full-time marketer. You also maybe are developing fundraising programs and providing potentially programming, and, all those different ands that I think is pretty common for marketers in the sector. I'm going to bump in. There's some great comments coming in. Oh, you guys are blowing me away over here with the comment section here. I'm going to throw this over to Shay, but how should nonprofits decide where to show up? So what are you, and then we already started to jump in on this, but how are you deciding, as American Humanist Association is presenting itself out to the world with this now attempt for different audiences or bringing in different people? What is your decision-making matrix on some of that?
Well, we are probably not the standard that I would recommend. And even though our team is literally 3 people handling social media, and it's technically like 2.5 people, one of the things that truly benefits us, especially when it comes to brainstorming what will work and what won't, because American Humanist Association does involve itself with a lot of rapid response content. Um, we need more brains. So something that I'm really, really excited about that my director had started even before I came on was a weekly writers session where everybody on our entire team and the entire organization comes to these meetings, and we all just chat about, like, hey, what's in your feeds this week, or hey, what show are you watching this week, or what random thoughts. And sometimes we'll bring the question to prompt everyone just to get some ideas. Our best performing post last year was actually one that our policy team came up with. And it was in response to Pete Hegseth using a Franklin meme and like showing Franklin just doing some absurd crap. So that person suggested, hey, why don't we, I'll shout them out. Claire. Thank you, Claire. Claire was like, why don't we pull some of the best of Franklin demonstrating humanism and share about that? And that was our best performing post across all platforms last year. That being said, we are on every platform.
Okay.
We're on every single one. And it's really interesting to see how we're received on each one. We already know that we have a massive audience on Facebook, 600,000 people following our page. It's a cesspool. The comments are like part of the reason why we get such high engagement is because everybody is a troll. But I've been given permission to troll them back. And so that's my therapy every day is I get to just like go to Dale and be like, oh, Dale, wah, wah. Like I get to do that kind of stuff while still maintaining it from a humanist perspective. But I then we go to our TikTok, and our TikTok audience is bombarding us with messages about how do we get involved, how do we get active on this thing. And they love seeing Fish's reports each week. Fish is our executive director, about what we need to be concerned with this week about the separation of church and state and how we can get involved and fight back. Our Instagram is like we have so many different arms of our social media. And I want to emphasize to anybody listening, I think that's mostly to do with the fact that we are such an old organization. But we also have this team that is just, we're very excited about social media and the difference of behavior across all of the platforms. But again, I don't believe that they started from all of these platforms. I think they definitely started from one.
It's super interesting and I do think that that's really great that you're noting the age of the organization, because you end up with potentially a lot of legacy followers on somewhere like Facebook that are probably going to be very different than the engagement you might get on a platform like LinkedIn, TikTok. That different people go to different places. The trolling is really hilarious, but I do think it speaks to the fact that not everyone will love your mission. And I think that's actually something that's okay, right? Like to be authentic about going, this isn't for everybody, but for the people it's for, this is amazing, right?
Well, real quick, sorry, before you move on.
No, that's okay.
I will say that the thing is that, yes, it's so freeing, Dan. It's one of my favorite things. But one of the things that I remember when I was working as a waitress at a corporate restaurant was how many regulars we gained by how many of them had complained about something that we were able to then fix. So I think that in an odd way, even the trolls and the way that we respond to them, instead of just being passive and laying down and taking it, I think that that's almost strengthening the relationships with people who weren't aware of us. So it's kind of like jumping them up in that awareness ladder. So that's been really telling too.
I think some of what I think the core there and what we've seen too is, if you're just trying to speak to an audience, but you would never engage with the comments, that's a social media thing too, right? That maybe we'll, and we probably address this a little bit more too, but that's really big. And there's some great starred questions. I'm having to start saving stuff, guys, because people are asking questions. I'm trying to figure out how we're going to get to them. But I'm going to jump over, because Kate, I know even before we were chatting, what's Candid's approach right now of how do you show up and how are you balancing capacity limits and experimentation?
Yeah, so technically our social media team is just me, and it's probably only about 50% of my role. We have other people who help with light content creation, but I end up actually like making everything. So we are fairly limited on what we can do. So with that, we have what we call maintenance mode with social media platforms, which is that we maintain it, we make sure it's up to date. We will post there once in a while to keep it active, but we don't create like personalized content for it. We don't have a personal strategy for it. We're not worried about the algorithm. We're keeping it alive, but we're not investing in it. And so we have one platform that's the focus, and then we have other platforms that are in, maintenance mode, and then we have ones where like we have an account, we're not super worried. And so depending on the year and our goals and what's performing for us, we will adjust which is our primary platform and which are on maintenance mode. So when I started, Twitter was our best platform. It was where we had the most robust conversations. It was where we had the most link clicks. And then with the purchase of Twitter by Elon Musk, the platform changed dramatically. Our audience shifted to LinkedIn. So we shifted with them. At that same time, Instagram was kind of more of our focus because we were trying to get more into video. And like now it's LinkedIn. It's fully LinkedIn. And so that's just in the 4 years I've been at Candid, we have shifted. And I think that's fine to say like, you have a finite capacity. You can pick and choose where you put that energy, but not totally abandon other platforms. We're not going to abandon all our followers on, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, but we're just not giving them the same level of attention that we're now giving to LinkedIn because we just don't have that capacity.
Yeah. I think it's super, there was Quinton, lovely comments on the side. Thank you so much for engaging in the conversations happening over at the side, brought up about what LinkedIn's for. And I'm sure this is an entirely different conversation that we could go like next level on, because the majority of nonprofits I know are sleeping on LinkedIn, and we only built off of LinkedIn. Our initial waitlist form, just LinkedIn. There was nothing else. We didn't exist anywhere else. And it has been by far, our traffic is like, about a third of our traffic to our website every month is organic social from LinkedIn. Not paid, not any of that stuff. But people, I think, are coming to LinkedIn for lots of reasons. And I heard a great statistic about like the average earned income is $80,000 on LinkedIn versus 45 on Facebook. And so like I think there is real potential on places like LinkedIn for just general fundraising and knowledge. And there are lots of people coming to LinkedIn looking for that, that there maybe is a little bit of a lack of bias or what's coming across your screen. I'm sure algorithms do what they do, but for us, it's always been LinkedIn, and it's been hugely, we haven't invested in the other platforms, but it is changing who we have that we're engaging with. Also find it to be overall more polite. I'm not having battles, right? Like I looked at Threads. I don't know if anybody else has gone down the like marketing Threads route, which I personally enjoy Threads for my personals, but it is crazy there. I couldn't keep up with the madness of what people would have to say about what we're doing for nonprofit work. I think it would be a bummer for me. I don't think I could handle it. So I think that's a balance too of what can your team be interested in, and where does your current team, have skills sets in too, because maybe someone's like keen on Instagram. And so that's great for them. And they don't even have a LinkedIn account. That might also be part of the strategy. Okay, great comments over here, guys. So many cool ones coming in. I'm going to try to get to some of the questions that people have for us as well. But How do you think this is a good one, because AI and, people are always worried, is it real? Did you create this? How do you think nonprofits can show up with the authenticity piece for AI and use the tools in meaningful ways that maybe help with marketing, but still keep it authentic? Shay.
That's been a big conversation for us recently, because of learning who OpenAI, ChatGPT works with and supports. That is completely in misalignment with who we are as an organization. That being said, we don't have like a team AI that we use, so that's like an individual decision. That being said, a lot of us are entertaining leaving ChatGPT to go over to something like Claude, where Anthropic has been much more vocal about things that are in alignment with us and what we support. We did Giving Tuesday. I had come up with a campaign that turned all of our leadership into like Street Fighter style cartoons. And I did that with the help at the time of ChatGPT. And while everyone was tickled by it, there was a we have a Discord in addition to our social media, and our Discord is about 2,000 people who are very vocal, and they were pissed that we had used AI to create like an artwork. And so we took heed. We no longer use AI when it comes to creating artwork. We still might tap into AI for when we have to come up with, captions, like bouncing back and forth ideas off of it, using it as like a junior copywriter to help us at least get something started on a blank piece of paper. But for the amount of content that we're putting out and the sheer volume of platforms that we have to maintain, we do end up tapping into it. But again, it's like not like an org wide thing. It's just up to us individually what we want to use and not.
That's great answers. And I think those are, the ethical versus like practicalities of most marketing teams. I think it can be very challenging for marketers to figure out how
Yeah.
to interact with AI right now. The Candid, I know, has lots of great articles because I got to participate in one actually about AI and write a little piece. And Mina Das talks about this. People who don't follow Mina Das, definitely great conversations about AI, nonprofits, and ethical pieces. Kate, what does this look like for the Candid team? And I know, you have all this research on this as well.
Yeah, so we do have a lot of conversations about AI. I mean, Candid itself, the Candid search platform, uses AI, to help you get funder recommendations and help, write letters of intent. So we we are kind of having fairly robust conversations that I think a lot of nonprofits just are not able to because of, the size that we are and how it has been implemented. So like we have AI policies about how AI is used at our organization, and those really guide us. And we have a Claude accounts for the organization that we use, and they're very wonderful. But yeah, in terms of like what that means when it comes to communications, though, is very different. Like we will use AI internally to, make quick things to test ideas, but things that go externally are all human made. And we really stick to that. I think once you have a moment where you have used AI for something externally, there is a trust that is lost. And so we have been very particular in that, everything is written by humans that goes out. You will never see AI generated imagery or videos. We are using AI as an intern in communications. They're helping with brainstorming, they're sorting through data, they're kind of relieving the administrative burden, but humans are looking at everything that's going out. Humans are the ones that are actually writing the content. And I think that's really, really important now. Interestingly, so I have a 7-year-old, and he is very aware of AI now because 7-year-olds watch too much YouTube. And anytime he sees something cool, like especially around the Olympics, he would be like, "Oh, is that AI?" I'd be like, "No, that's a real human. A real human is doing that." And he'd be like, "It looks like AI." And so I keep thinking about that, of like making sure that when people come to Candid that they're not like, oh, is that AI? Like, I want them to know this is human. This was made by us, like making sure that we have our voice really strong and that you're not losing that. So I think that awareness is important.
Really great advice. And there's some other folks talking just about AI in the comments and that authenticity piece, right? Because it is really challenging. It's a quick and easy fix. Very similarly, you know, we're a team of two at the Nonprofit Hive. We talk back and forth quite a bit in shared conversations, trying to go, oh, well, what about this? What about this? And adding all of those ideas and layers in. I really enjoy writing a lot. I also have a lot of thoughts. And so trying to make them into something that is slightly coherent, I love being able to be given some level of structure around my rants and ramblings. So, you know, I do think as a quick like ability to pull together things and get a plan, it's a really cool tool for marketing. And even just to test out, even sometimes I'll go, how accessible is what I'm saying here, right? And like that's a really great way. Hey, I'm thinking my audience is going to be this. What am I missing? And you know, I'm still very much learning and unlearning a bunch of cultural, racial, all of those things myself. I'm learning that. I would love to make sure that I'm putting out content that feels good to people, and I don't have an entire view on all of it. So I often am sometimes going, hey, where could I find some information about this? Where could I maybe, and going and looking, and, you know, so I do think for small, lean marketing teams, it can be an extra voice to help move you through what you're working on. And, you know, it doesn't replace you. I guess that's the thing for nonprofits who think it's going to completely replace what you need for a marketer. I'm sorry, that's probably not going to happen, or it's not going to turn out how you would like it to. So, you know, and thanks Julia's point about maintaining trust, right? Like that, I think is going to be the biggest part for nonprofit professionals for sure. So there was a couple questions that came in, but I'm going to ask one more question for both of you to answer first, and then we will move on to a couple of these questions, if that's okay. But this is the dream. So I'm going to just throw it to you guys as the dream. So Shay, if your budget and team doubled tomorrow, what's the first social media experiment you would run? And because I think sometimes that's the thing. A lot of us are like, what would we do if we could do it, you know, however we want it?
Well, we're a remote team, and I would absolutely love for us to be able to travel around because we have 250 local chapters that are all doing mutual aid work. And the fact that we can't be there to film any of it or catch like real time one-on-ones with people and get interviews and all that kind of stuff, like the amount of not just content, but like inspiration and proof of concept that you don't have to be a faith-based organization in order to do good in the world. I would love to be able to capture that. So that would be my thing, is like book me a flight to wherever this, you know, random chapter is, and let's get some footage so that we can show everybody that they can do this too.
That's fantastic. That's a great dream. May have to partially steal that one as part of my answer. What about yourself, Kate?
Yeah, I actually was very similarly thinking of like, I'd love to just have someone whose full job was content creation. I think like that's what we need, is just like a powerhouse content creator who can, like, you know, work on video content and write scripts and get out there and record videos and just do more. I think it would be nice for us to be able to like be on more platforms and have that added capacity. So just having someone, you know, that has like upgraded equipment and like a phone that's like a work phone, and they've got ring lights and they've got microphones and they can like go capture content. That's what I would love.
These are both fantastic. The in-person, I think, component is something that a lot of nonprofit marketing is really hard to get around. You know, I think there's probably lots of people listening who are like, oh, I'd love to do more polished X, Y, and Z. I don't actually know if polish serves well in this sector. If anything, right now, it looking like real, and back to the truth and AI thing, like I think actually everyone's a little weary about like, if it looks too polished, like, what does that mean? And for myself, I would love to have someone whose entire role was on engagement and reciprocity in our social media, to be able to lift up other stuff, other content, other great things that are happening out in the sector. Because for us, that's the thing where it's like, I got to get the heck off of LinkedIn right now, guys. Like, it's too much happening. I'd love to like engage with everything, but I do think that that's a very valuable position, and something a lot of nonprofits aren't doing is going out and engaging with the people they hope are going to get involved with some of the work that they're doing at their nonprofit. Okay. We got a couple great questions, comments came in here. So we're going to get this one for sure. We'll see if we can get to the other ones. Esther submitted this great one. Has anyone experienced a decrease in LinkedIn engagement because of algorithm changes? And I'm happy to speak just quick to it first, but I don't know what's up with LinkedIn. And I gave up paying attention or trying. And actually things started to go better when I was just consistent with what I was speaking to, talking about, and getting, just how I was doing my engagement. It seemed to even out. Like the less I tried to chase the rules, it seemed to do better. Anybody else? Kate, anything to speak to this?
Yeah, for Candid, we have not noticed. I think we've had pretty steady, good engagement. But my personal LinkedIn like tanked. And I think it started like late last fall. A lot of people in social media started saying like, why can't I see the posts I want to? Why am I not seeing things until 2 weeks later? Like I never know when I post if it's going to get like 10 likes or if it's going to get 1,000. And I think it used to be a lot more consistent for me personally. So it's something I have noticed. I do know that there have been conversations that they're working on updating it. A great person to follow on LinkedIn is Annie Mae Hodge. She does like weekly, here's what you need to know about algorithm changes. And it's a great cheat sheet for every week. But LinkedIn is working on improving things. But yes, I think there are definitely some people have seen that LinkedIn has decreased quite a bit.
Yeah. Anything to add to this, Shay?
LinkedIn is actually the platform for us that we just post to maintain. We actually don't, while our audience is technically here, I don't think that they're in the headspace for our content when they are here. So I don't necessarily feel like it's where our people are at when they would be most inspired by our content.
Yeah, totally fair. And I would say, very similar to what Kate said, our business page has been amazingly consistent. My personal socials is also similarly. I have no idea what's going to connect, and I stopped trying to worry about it. And instead, I'm just like, yeah, we're just going to go. But our LinkedIn for our business page just continues to grow, and more shares, more, So, and maybe that's our messaging, that we've just really hit like the nail on the head with what we wanted to message about. There's some other great questions here, but we're like basically finishing up time. Everyone, this has been amazing for all of you who joined today. What a great crew. And I do want to just quick give another shout out to Marissa. Please go and check out, I know our co-director Nicole is in the comments. She'll share a little bit about Marissa's work again, but just making this possible. Thank you to the two of you for letting me bring my favorite topic to LinkedIn and to the many people who engaged on this. I think we still know social media has a place. It is shifting. And so we all need to look at it a little bit differently through the lens of what it means to be a nonprofit on social media, because I think that's very different than if we were talking about how Nike is interacting across social media. And we shouldn't be comparing ourselves in this sector to that because it's going to be very, very different for sure. So thanks, guys. Really appreciate you both. Thank you to everyone in the comments who jumped in. Please go follow Kate and Candid, Shay, and everything the American Humanist Association is doing, maybe on Instagram, which is more exciting than apparently their LinkedIn, but go and jump in there. And if people have questions, for sure, jump in the comments, and hopefully we'll get a chance to go over there and answer some of the more direct questions at some point in the future. But thanks everyone for joining us. Lovely to see you all. Cheers.